Good morning and welcome to the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay's 15th Annual Chesapeake Watershed Forum. For those I've not yet met, my name is Kate Fritz, and I have the honor of serving as the Executive Director of the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay. The Alliance is so excited to have over 400 people joining us this morning and over the next 2 days from all over the Chesapeake region. In any other year, we would all be looking forward to driving over the mighty Potomac and Shenandoah rivers, past beautiful and historic Harper's Ferry, on our way to the National Conservation Training Center in Shepherdstown, West Virginia. But alas, 2020 is different. We would be packing our posters and our thumb drives with presentations and making sure we packed comfortable shoes so we can walk the beautiful trails on campus. We would be sending texts to colleagues telling them that we can't wait to see each other at Forum. But this year, it looks a little different. This year, we're all grabbing a cup of coffee from our kitchens, firing up our computers, heading to our couches, our offices, our back porches, all while wrestling kids, dogs, partners, and roommates. It's no secret that 2020 has been a truly challenging year, not just for the Alliance, but for the Chesapeake Bay region, our country, and our world. The COVID-19 global pandemic has brought us to a tipping point between the way things used to be and what are shaping up to be new norms. As a movement, we have realized that we need to do more regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that just being not racist is not enough. We are stepping up to actively become anti-racist in our work, and the Alliance stands in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement. Our Chesapeake Bay welcomes and includes all of the diverse voices and perspectives of the 18 million people that call the Chesapeake their home. In a year when looking ahead to the future is obscured by the uncertainty of what's around the next corner, I'm consoled by the very fact that hindsight is indeed 2020. As we look back over the last 7 months, we can see that our collective Chesapeake community has had to pivot and change most everything we do. And we have seen incredible resilience in both our human and our natural systems. We started revising our plans for this event way back in May, when we were unsure if we'd be all be able to be together safely at NCTC this fall. The work of adjusting a large conference into a totally virtual space is part science, part art, a whole bunch of work, and a little bit of magic. I want to thank the staff that helped make this year's virtual Watershed Forum come to life, specifically the incredible, the thoughtful, and the very organized Jenny McGarvey. I also want to thank Rebecca Wertheim for using her experience with helping coordinate 14 previous forums to make the 15th extra special. And to Lucy Heller for supporting and coordinating so much behind the scenes. I'm eternally grateful for this team's creativity and commitment to delivering a forum in a whole new format. And this small team cannot do the work alone. And we've depended on the volunteers from our planning committee and other Alliance staff members to facilitate over 47 sessions over the next 2 days. And let me tell you, that's a lot of Zoom lines to coordinate. So let's take a moment to snap, clap, and applaud the hard work of so many members of our Chesapeake Bay community. Let's give them our thanks. This forum would not be made possible without the generous support of so many sponsors, including the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, the Chesapeake Bay Program, the Maryland Department of Natural Resources, American Dairy Association of the Northeast, the City of Martinsburg, West Virginia, Gunpowder Valley Conservancy, the Choose Clean Water Coalition, the Chesapeake Conservation Landscaping Council, and Goucher College. Thank you to our incredible sponsors who continue to stand by the Alliance and the Watershed Forum to bring us all together. So I would now like to turn it over to Jake Reilly, the Director of Chesapeake Bay Programs at the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, the title sponsor of the forum, and a good friend to conservation efforts everywhere. Jake, I invite you to turn on your video and join us.
Well, welcome, folks. Thank you so much, Kate, for the quite abnormal welcome to this year's forum. It certainly is not par for the course this year, the format, the content, et cetera, but thrilled that we're all here joined today to be able to continue this important work. As Kate said, and needless to say, The absolutely profound and insane and crazy convergence of events here in 2021 makes for quite the backdrop for this year's Watershed Forum. Thinking about the forum and thinking about this plenary, I sort of paused for a second and thought about really, given the challenges that we're all continuing to face, that Kate so definitely alluded to, why are we still here? Why are we convening this Watershed Forum in the face of some really profound challenges facing us all individually, regionally, and as a nation? And for me personally, early in COVID, really right around springtime, it sort of clicked for me that as we as human communities were forced inside and forced to reassess and change our processes and programs and the way that we work and the way that we interact with our families, the world kept turning. It was right around springtime. The flowers came out, the birds came through, it started getting hot in the summertime, and now the leaves are changing outside. And so as we think about the profound challenges facing our natural systems, we've got to keep working. So in that vein, I'm just so thrilled that Kate and her team have continued to push forward and found a way to keep providing deep and meaningful engagement opportunities, despite the many, many challenges, logistical, technical, financial, otherwise, that I know that Kate and her team have really deftly handled here. And also, I want to mention, Kate also referenced the fact that there are many hands at play in planning this event. And more specifically, I know that the Alliance team has done a lot of excellent work over the last several months in planning this, really working with and through you all as partners in watershed restoration, really figuring out what is working, what's not, the do's and the many, many, many don'ts of effective virtual communication and collaboration. So really a thanks on behalf of NIFWF and on behalf of the Alliance for your participation in today's event, and also in really helping to inform what will be an effective event. I also just have to say quickly that we're thrilled that we're able to sort of present such a slick and smooth program, and I'm sure that Kate is very eager to sort of see that through. But the point here is that we have all been forced to do our work differently, but we have been so profoundly impressed with the way that people have pivoted, the way that they work, thinking about new solutions, and really continuing forward with addressing some of the most deep and lasting challenges that we face here in this work. So with that, I will hand it back over to Kate for our fabulous plenary here this morning.
Thank you, Jake, and thanks again for the continued support of NIFWF in this forum in our 15th year of doing this together. So if it takes a village to raise a child, it takes 18 million residents of the nation's largest estuary to fight for clean water. We cannot do this work alone. And my final thanks is to all of you out there attending the forum, learning, listening, and digging deeper. Today, the Chesapeake region is being hit by rain from Tropical Storm Zeta, the 27th named hurricane of the year. We are only one named storm away from breaking the record set in 2015. The rain falling all over our watershed is challenging our efforts for cleaner water for the 18 million people that live in the Chesapeake region, an example of how climatic changes are coming to bear in our everyday lives. And so it is fitting that this year's forum theme is climate resiliency in a changing Chesapeake watershed. This year, we are offering sessions that highlight restoration and conservation approaches and policies that enhance the resiliency of our lands, aquatic systems, and communities to withstand adverse effects of climate change. The Alliance has seen and been part of so many changes since we were formed in 1971. And 2021 is a milestone year for both the Alliance and the Chesapeake Bay. We look forward to celebrating 50 years of building diverse partnerships in order to solve our watershed's most pressing challenges. So I hope you all enjoy your time at Forum this year, and I hope you will consider joining in the Halloween fun and sporting a costume to your sessions tomorrow. I recommend downloading the Sched app on your phone or bookmarking the page on your browser. Sched is the substitute for the campus map that we would normally be handing out to attendees. Our first plenary session to start the forum is brought to you by the Alliance's Chesapeake Collective. The collective is an intention, a space, and a platform for diverse voices and narratives to be shared, seen, heard, and incorporated into the broader conversation about our common vision for a healthy, flourishing, and resilient Bay watershed, all through creative means. We know that the diversity of the Chesapeake Bay watershed is one of the greatest strengths that we have. I will now hand it over to Gabby Roth, Manager of Equity and Community Engagement with the Chesapeake Conservancy. Thank you all for your commitment and dedication to a cleaner Chesapeake Bay for all, and enjoy your time at Forum.
Thank you so much, Kate and Jake, for that beautiful introduction. It really set the tone for this conference, for the forum, and I am so honored and humbled to be a part of this plenary session and to be moderating with our amazing panelists. So I wanted to give a little bit of a background to what we're going to be talking about today and describe the format of this session, along with some housekeeping notes before we get started. So like Kate said, this was put on by the Chesapeake Collective, and I want to thank everyone who was a part of planning this session. And what we're going to be talking about today is really bringing climate change and climate change advocacy and education to what's happening currently in our country at the intersections of social justice, environmental justice, and other things as well, including climate immigration. And this session is going to be a panel where I will be moderating the panel. We're going to have some videos and some PowerPoint presentations from our two panelists. And we'll also have some Q&A at the end of both of their presentations. Some housekeeping notes below is that this session will be recorded and posted on Sched later on today on the session page. As participants, you will not have any video or microphones. All of the questions will go into the chat box. And we have some folks who are moderating the chat box so that they can send some questions over to me. We can ask our panelists at the end. So before we begin, I also would like to recognize that my pronouns are she, her, and I would also like to do a land acknowledgement, acknowledge the fact that we are all on stolen land. And it's really important to recognize the folks who lived on this land before we were here. So I'm currently calling in from Little Rock, Arkansas. I am a Baltimore native. I'm just having a road trip across the country, so you're catching me at an interesting time. And I'm calling in from Osage territory. And I would like to invite Hoesy and Linda, Josie Corona and Linda Chung to chime in and give their land acknowledgement as well.
I'll go first. Hi, everyone. I'm Linda Chung, and I'm currently dialing in from Miami, Florida. And this was the native lands from Tequesta, Taino, and Seminole Indians.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Josie Corona, and my pronouns are he, him, or they. And I want to acknowledge that I am standing on the tribal lands of Osage, Cherokee, and Muskogee Creek people. We honor their elders, past and present. I am also standing on the land of the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre. So I pay respects to these victims and survivors, past and present. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement upon all of the lands we are standing in.
Thank you so much, Josie and Linda. And I'm going to be dropping a link in the chat. If you would like to look at a map and see what native land you are currently on, you can use this interactive map, and it will help give you a little bit of education around what territory you are residing on. So before we get started, as Kate mentioned, we are in a new normal right now. And I'm just curious, and this question will tie back into our discussion a little bit later. If we could just do like a waterfall question in the chat, so just throw your answers in there. What creative ways have you connected with people over COVID? So this could be with your coworkers, with your family members, with anyone, your friends across the world in the country. Please put your answers in the chat. And I'll give a few moments for some answers, and then we're going to get started. All right, now this is giving me some good ideas too. Old-fashioned writing letters. I've gone to that one too. Wow, okay. All right, these are really creative ideas. I just think it's incredible what happens when we are under so much pressure, the ways that we can be creative to really connect with one another. And I know that I also want to thank the forum because I do feel like this is a very connected space, even though we are far apart and we're not in Shepherdstown, West Virginia anymore. Okay, so before I get started, I'm going to introduce our first panelist, and we're going to start with her video. Her name is Linda Chung. She is an artist and an environmentalist based in Miami, Florida. She founded an incredible nonprofit called Before It's Too Late. And with that nonprofit, they educate and inspire people to build a more sustainable world together. Their projects use augmented reality and murals, which you'll see in the video. It's really awesome, the blending of technology and art. And they also do an Earth Week challenge. And Linda holds an MBA degree from MIT Sloan and a BS in economics degree from Wharton. And her question to you is, can we change hearts, minds, and actions before it's too late? So Linda, I'm going to ask you to put your video on really quickly. I'm going to turn off my video and mic, and we're going to watch a short video.
What I like about AR tech is that there is the potential to actually take the data and visualize it in some way. What would 3 feet or 6 feet of sea level rise look like, in your surrounding environment? I chose Miami because I realized this is ground zero for climate change here in the United States. It's not in the far future. By the end of the century, Miami could be completely underwater. I founded the nonprofit organization called Before It's Too Late. We use arts and technology to find creative ways to educate people and inspire them on different environmental issues. We like to do a lot of different creative projects, but probably the work that we do the most often is augmented reality and public murals. Having such a complex production of augmented reality was definitely a work in discovery. It was like, all right, we need definitely a muralist who knows how to paint. We need some 3D artists and animators. We need people who can program. People can tell this was not just an afterthought. This is like months of work to create something that is at the maximum of art and tech.
What we're trying to do here is we're trying to get the people that interact with our murals to actually take action. AR just gives you an incredible palette, an incredible canvas that you can really manifest almost anything into. It does allow you to create another layer of reality on top of what you see. You bring up your phone and it's like a window into this other world. And basically this mural is telling a story about sea level rise in Miami and how we're going to be affected here first. In this mural you have two choices. You can be the change or you can make no change. And if you make no change, then what you end up seeing is the dystopian future of Miami with sea level rise, with the city in decay. But you can always go back and be the change. And if you're the change, then you can actually live a life sustainable with nature.
What I try to do is always make sure that even if it's an artistic experience, it's grounded in the science.
I'm mad about the traffic. I'm mad about the traffic too. I'm mad at you for being part of the traffic. No, you are part of the traffic. Hey, what if there's a bus we can take?
party bus, celebrate, save the planet. Every passenger is one less car in traffic. Tell your mom and dad they can save on gas. We keep a green planet and green money in our hands. If you agree, get on the party bus and dance. Keep it cool, no heat, no greenhouse gas. So here's a plan. It's quite apparent. Carpool to school and annoy your parents.
I don't need a license to brag. I just go and ride. Take care of the planet, take care of the sky. We got the power of electricity. The future is clean for you and for me.
Welcome to the future. I'm your electric self-driving Uber. License don't need it, no global heating. Keep the air clean for the humans who breathe it. Less traffic, no accidents. More lives saved and less time spent. So you can enjoy more time doing homework.
There's homework in the future?
All right, so I guess I'll be taking on from here. So hi everyone, I'm Linda Chung. And the video was a little compilation of two different things. It showed a couple of the augmented reality murals that I work on, as well as the Earth Week challenge, which I'll talk a little bit more about both. So I'm here in Miami, as I said before, and it shares a lot of similarities with the Chesapeake Bay area in that it's really vulnerable to sea level rise. And it's considered ground zero for climate change here in the United States for a number of reasons. You know, sea level rise, it's really low elevation here, and we have unique geology with the limestone bedrock, which is porous so that you can't actually defend against sea level rise by, you know, building walls, because it actually comes up from under, and it's entirely based on your elevation. And of course, we're right in the path of all the hurricanes, and it's really hot in the summer with extreme heat. And also right in the path of all the climate immigrants that will be coming from and are already coming from the Caribbean islands. And so this is a really unique area, and I was also attracted to move here. So I moved here after, when I first started Before It's Too Late, about 4 years ago. I was actually starting my second year at business school at MIT Sloan, and wanted to work on and devote myself to fighting the issue of climate change, and specifically from an American perspective, because I think a lot of people tend to think of this as a faraway thing that's affecting, you know, small Pacific Island nations or Bangladesh. But, you know, how do you have the most powerful and wealthy country, and the only country who's not part of the Paris Agreement, be, you know, take this on and realize that this is here at home, and that we have a responsibility, because not only as a leader, but because we, you know, from a responsibility standpoint, have the United States has put the most cumulative greenhouse gas emissions in the atmosphere to date. So that motivated me to come to Miami, because, you know, this is ground zero, but also because I thought, here's a place where it's a major swing state, and it's not like politically everyone's already progressive. Like, there's work to be done. You know, it's interesting in that it's a real diverse melting pot of political views as well as cultures. So anyhow, this my nonprofit is Before It's Too Late. We're a small nonprofit. We do arts, creative work, and with the mission of trying to use that creativity to educate and inspire more people in the public, the people who are currently disengaged, to become aware of the issues of climate change and other environmental issues, and also to know how they can take action. Oh, next. Sorry, I'll do this thing. So when I first got into climate change, it was maybe 6 years ago that I became really aware of how big the problem was. And at first I approached it from, you know, coming from a business background and typically I would think like, let's approach this more from a technical standpoint, like how do we direct more investment dollars into renewable energies? What are the policy actions that we can take? And as I kind of researched this issue more, I started to realize that actually we have all of the solutions. We have all of the technical solutions on hand. You know, new types of energy, new ways of farming, new ways to travel. And really the biggest issue is the lack of social and political will. And what we need is radical cultural change. And so I shifted my approach and wanted to start working on it from that, you know, really just thinking about society and what are, like, how do we shape our paradigms in how we view the world and what we value, and, you know, how we lead our lives. And so I started to realize that climate change is this, you know, unique issue, and it suffers in these three main ways. So it feels very distant and abstract to people, when in fact it's actually very urgent. It feels insurmountable and huge once you kind of understand the problem. It becomes overwhelming. But in fact, we cause the problem, and so we have all the solutions to actually solve it. And then unfortunately here, it's also become politicized, when in fact it's a very, you know, global problem. It's a human problem. And that's really the problem that drives me and my nonprofit, and why I focus on art and cultural change when it comes to tackling the issue of climate change. So I wanted to flip through some pictures of some of the augmented reality murals that we've done here in Miami. Miami is known for its arts, being a hub of art, but also for murals. We have the Wynwood Arts District that people come and travel to. And so I wanted to use that. So this is our first mural. We did this in February 2018. And this one is called What Future Do You Choose for Miami? And it's specifically about sea level rise and how it affects. And you can see the sea level rise line. And it's a very colorful mural. And it represents sort of Miami culturally and what it wants to display to the world, this place of party and fun and Art Deco. But here you have this looming sea level rise threat for people who are paying attention. And then there's that canary dangling in the water, kind of the canary in the coal mine analogy. You saw that a little bit in the video. Next. So then, okay, so that mural did really well, and it got a lot of attention, like local press and the national press. And so we kept going. And that first mural, I actually paid out of pocket the expenses for the paint and everything. Like it was about $2,000. And the rest of it, the real cost of murals is really the labor that goes into it. So all of that was volunteer. So with this was the first one that I actually got, you know, this owner of the building to sponsor it. And it was right in the heart of Wynwood. And he was a veterinarian. And so we wanted to do this about animals. And we did this about the sixth mass extinction, which we're currently going through, in which animals are going extinct at 1,000 times what the natural rate is. And the last major extinction event was 65 million years ago with dinosaurs. So here you see all these animals that are all part of the Florida landscape, and some of them are native and others are actually invasive species, like that Burmese python to the left is now sort of tearing up the Everglades and eating up all the small animals and mammals and reptiles with no natural predators. And it's because a few pet owners release them into the wild. And you also see to the right there, the lionfish is another invasive species that's destroying the coral reefs here. And you see as well. So anyways, this is augmented. So when you scan it with a Android or iPhone, each of the animals, it would recognize each of the animals and give you a little bit of information about them. Next. And this one you saw in the video is Liberty Gardens Park. And this one is about pollinators. And this one we've just launched in Chicago. So it's our first one outside of Miami, which is awesome. And in the historic Black neighborhood of Bronzeville. So we touch upon the intersection of, you know, climate change and Black communities, climate change with other social justice issues. And here we kind of honor the past and the history of these figures who have helped shape the legacy of this community while looking towards the future and imagining a green society together. And so I'm wrapping up on my time, and I just want to share the final thing. The second video you saw might have been a little confusing if you don't know the context, but we started this thing called Earth Week Challenge here. Right now, we've done our 3rd year, and each year we've got more and more schools involved in it. So last year we had over 50 schools in South Florida take part. And basically the students take 1 week during the week of Earth Day, which is in late April, to do a challenge with their teacher in classrooms. And every day of the week, there's a different theme and a different challenge where they practice a sustainable lifestyle choice. And so it's breaking down this huge issue of environmentalism and sustainability into your life and how you can apply that in each of the themes. And we created fun videos featuring the kids for each of the days so that teachers can just play that video. And that's really it. That's me. So that's my contact information. Thank you. Sorry for going a little over.
You are good. Thank you so much, Linda. Your video is amazing. It really shows the experience and what your work does with students, especially. And I'm really intrigued by the intersections of the disciplines that you use in your work. So the art and the technology, the advocacy. And so we're going to talk a lot about that as we get into the Q&A. So thank you so much for that presentation. Yeah. And I'm now going to introduce our next panelist, Josie Corona, and we'll have a short video by him. So Josie Corona is a multidisciplinary artist, and his work draws from his personal experiences as a queer Latinx immigrant in the United States. His work confronts a lot of really important and pressing issues of our time, such as race, class, gender, otherness, celebration, isolation, and the climate crisis. And his installations are these really visceral experiences of colorful and sculptural work, as well as performance pieces. And his work has been shown in the Hirshhorn Museum, at the Baltimore Museum of Art, the Walters Art Museum, among many other prestigious museums throughout the country, which is really impressive. And his video today is going to be actually a debut of one of his newest pieces. So usually his performance pieces will be, in person, and I think that this is a really neat way that he's adapted to a virtual exhibit experience. So get yourself ready to be fully immersed in a dreamlike climate change situation where we're learning about climate migration.
Good morning again, everybody. My name is Josie Corona. I am a multidisciplinary artist working across really a variety of media with a particular focus on both installation and performance. In my series Climate Immigrants, I choreograph large-scale performances that really consider this impending plight of climate-induced migration worldwide and its effects on all of us. And much like Linda, also with kind of, you know, a lens of being based in the USA. So like, what can we do here? In these performances, performers wear what I call climate ponchos, and as well as headgear that obscures the performer's identity so that they really just become a body moving through space and traversing space. Periodically, they will open up their arms to reveal the designs on the climate poncho and silently continue with their journey. I believe we are at a crossroads, much like all of us here do, and we are really reckoning with who we are as a species. We are really considering and having to deal with how we've, you know, comported ourselves throughout history, and maybe thinking about how the same old is no longer working. We are here searching and starting to look for new ways to exist on this planet and to relate to the world. And especially, as mentioned earlier, in this time when, you know, our encroachment into the natural world has really brought on this pandemic that is really shifting even the way we view our own humanity. You know, when I think about the feelings I was feeling in March, it feels like decades ago, you know what I mean? So it was a little bit more existential, but then, you know, several months later, we are kind of like hit with the reality that like, not even within a pandemic will systemic structures and systems will stop killing Black people, Indigenous people, or people of color. And so what do we do? Here we are. It's a crossroads. It's uneasy. We don't know how to move forward. Like Linda mentioned, let's just not forget that we caused this. Therefore, we most likely, and we do, have the solutions. And so I think really we're just here to redefine our relationship to Mother Nature, the land, each other, and others. And so when I'm thinking about these ideas of climate immigration, I do want to center, and we have already in this conversation, center this idea that, you know, we often think, oh, poor little Mother Nature, like, you know, she's really the one that's being hurt, and what are we gonna do about it? But I think it's a little bit more productive if we center ourselves, because we know the resilience of nature. We know that nature will be just fine. And I think that it's a little bit, you know, more destabilizing to realize that as a species, we're the ones in trouble. And so, you know, as I'm thinking about these kind of intersections of different forms of oppression, it makes me wonder, yes, climate change and the climate crisis is affecting us all, but there are, you know, these structural systems that are in place, which again, we've seen through this pandemic, we've seen through who is dying, and also just, you know, thinking about environmental racism. We know that as people, we have designed systems that are unfair, and there's always a winning group. And so I do want to center this idea that while we will all be affected by climate change, we will all be affected at varying degrees. So the way, I think about this, and this is more just for me in the studio, I'm thinking like, well, some people are going to be having access to their bunkers, or maybe a biodome will be erected, and some folks will live perfectly quote unquote new normal lives. But it does make me wonder about, well, what happens to those crops that maybe we are still interested in, but for some reason they can't grow inside of the biodome? What do we do? And who goes to plant and care for these plants outside of, this biodome? And do those people have access to the biodome? Do they have to live outside of the biodome? And who are these people? And I think it's clear that it's Indigenous people, Black people, and people of color. So while we will all be dealing with these effects of climate change, we will be dealing with them differently as we seek answers and to really change the course of our history. And so with this last image, I just want to take a moment to, really thank everyone. And I think that this is such an important conference. And as an artist, I think that, yes, I am skilled in creating these experiences, but really, I think that making partnerships with organizations such as this one is really where the power of the work lies, because in this way, it can really drive that mission forward through, visuals that kind of are compelling and pull viewers in. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Hoesy. That was a very visceral experience. I know I felt it through my screen, and I really appreciate we are in an existential crisis, and what you described sounded a little bit like a sci-fi novel, but it also currently feels like we're living in a sci-fi novel. So thank you so much for showcasing your work and debuting that new piece for us. So we're going to get into our Q&A now, and I have a few questions prepared, and I see that we've also got a few from the audience. We've got about 15 minutes. So the first question that I'm going to ask, I'm going to prompt it just by talking about our brains. People talk a lot about the left brain and the right brain, and I know a lot of our attendees here are scientists, including myself. I was a trained scientist, but I also consider myself an artist. Science people tend to use the left side of their brain, while artists tend to use the right side of their brain, right? That's the creativity piece versus the analytical piece. But if we're really looking to have a holistic approach to climate change, we really should be using the whole brain, which is why I love the Chesapeake Collective and why we're bringing art into the collective, into the forum. So my question for both of you is, why art? And in your experience, how can art influence people in ways that science might not be able to?
I actually prepared a couple of slides on this. So yeah. So I will say that I come from a left brain sort of background. But actually, I think I'm right in the middle. I have both sides, and I think, left, right, whatever, but I think we're multifaceted beings with, many interests and skills. And anyhow, so why, art attracted me was when I started to realize how much this is a cultural issue. And like, that's what we're missing, is we need to harness the power of the society to rethink. And there's a couple models I like to use, which is the iceberg model and the ripple effect. So here in the iceberg model is just this idea that when you just focus on what's on top or above the surface, like what you see are the symptoms, like sea level rise is a symptom. You're not really working on, what the real problems are, and that might be structural. Like, I think many people maybe go 1 or 2 levels down, which is like, how our system is structured, how our policy is structured. But even further below that is what I think is the most transformational stuff is like our mental models, our paradigms. And for an instance, two that come to mind. One is I think our society currently is obsessed about financial growth. It permeates everything from how you measure yourself as a person, personal success, how countries measure their success, measuring based on GDP, and how companies do it, corporations do it, even the whole quarterly, reporting. Sorry, I might be going a little too much here, but anyways, I think that this taking it from financial growth to more of like a sustainable growth mindset, that's one paradigm shift. And another one might even be our relationship with nature, rather than feeling so disconnected with it, realize then that we are critically a part of it, both dependent on it and affecting it. And then finally, the ripple effect for me is just the power of the person and their social groups. And that as much as you might think, looking at one person, like how much difference can I do? But I really think that we can affect society and cultures as individuals.
Yeah, why art? I feel like, yes, left brain, right brain, but really these are kind of things that are learned, right? That we kind of like realize that, oh, this is like an important thing to do versus this is more of a pleasurable thing to do. So we kind of like, I feel like limit ourselves as humans just by already creating these systems that don't allow, like you said, like a fluidity between these two. But for me, the way I think about art is that we are very literate in like how to, engage with the world in a kind of like in a brain space, but we don't pay as much attention to the visuals or quote unquote the art, which is all around us. It's the movies that got us through this pandemic. It's the music, it's the XYZ. And I think that we just take those visuals or the quote unquote art for granted, which is how we, as a Mexican immigrant, that's how we, got these stereotypes of Mexicans as greasers, as like, as Speedy Gonzalez, honey, like he's Speedy because he's a thief. So like, we are not questioning the visuals that we are consuming, but they are writing us. We, internalize these things, and whether we like it or not, they are, crafting our worldview. So I think that art has that special place where, much like your favorite song or that one song that when you hear it, it gives you those chills that go all the way to the bone, and you can't even really describe what it is, but you understand it. I think that's where the power of art lies, that we can really shift perspectives and create new visions for the present and the future.
Thank you both for those really awesome answers. And I really love that both of your work really taps into all of those different other facets of our society, and really brings home the message and allows people to experience climate change in a completely different way than they would in their classroom or on a field trip. So the next question that I have is about a term that specifically has become more popular during the pandemic, which is intersectional environmentalism. And intersectionality was a term that was coined by Kimberly Crenshaw, and it was about the Black woman in the environmental movement and the intersection of gender and race. And intersectional environmentalism is really this inclusive perspective of sustainability that recognizes the intersections of social justice, racial justice, environmental justice. So I know that a lot of what you work on is climate migration, climate gentrification, social justice. So I was hoping that you could speak a little bit to that, and also why taking this intersectional approach is so crucial to approaching climate change.
So, yeah, I'll go ahead. So I think that, kind of like how I mentioned earlier, it's so much easier to just be like, oh, we're on the same plane. Like, oh, the waters are rising. Oh, we're all in trouble. Oh, again, that is just an oversimplified way to look at the world, because we understand that, you know, a man's experience is completely different than a woman's experience, and a white woman's experience is completely different than a Black woman's experience. So really, I think understanding that things are not going to affect us in the same ways, and that is something we need to be very aware. In the same way that police are killing Black people and Indigenous people at higher, and Latinx people at higher rates, these, you know, and then if we try to kind of like level the playing field and fix it for all of us, it really doesn't fix anything. So I think that really thinking about an intersectional approach is realizing that some communities will need more support than others. That again, those that are outside of the means of being able to afford a biodome, you know, so are those people going to be suffering the same way that you know, climate immigrants will be suffering? I don't think so. So I think that really shifting the way we're thinking about this will help us come up with better solutions.
But I think of it a few ways. One is, I think everyone here probably knows that, and a lot of people out in the world don't know this, that the people who cause the most climate change or contributed the most to the greenhouse gas emissions are the ones who will suffer the least or last and have the most, and also have access to the most capital to solve this. But I think that it kind of is one of those things, like once the world, like we would hope that we'd all wake up here in our place of privilege earlier, so that we don't wait until the end to address the issue, because by then it'll be too hard for us as well. I mean, if you're going to think about it from a purely selfish standpoint, like it's like by the time all this, the stressors are just starting, but those stressors are only going to increase around the world. The stresses around water, the stress around food, the stress around climate, like weather, and security. But I think that's one way I think of it. And another way I think of it is just that, to me, all of this is around the beauty of diversity, like diversity of people, diversity of cultures, but also diversity of species. You know, clearly having diversity is healthy for the planet, for us. And to me, it's really the same thing as just honoring the life in everything, in each individual, as well as the different species and animals and plants, which are all crucial to this overall ecosystem. And I think when we start like naming the way that, I feel like we're going through this consciousness evolution, like awakening, in which we first awaken to the fact that we're all humans and brothers and sisters of the same family. But now we're awakening to the fact that the way we treat animals and plants are important too. And then they're not it, you know, they are also beings. I think this, yeah, so the idea of diversity, and I forgot, I had one more point, but forgot now.
Linda, could you explain climate gentrification? You told a story about a part of Miami. I wanted to.
Yeah. So climate gentrification is sort of this unique phenomenon that occurs in Miami, where different areas that were historically Black or places of color that were historically on lands that, so basically back in the day, there was like redlining in Miami, where the beaches and coastal areas were for white people only, and that's where the prosperous communities, you know, and then the colored communities would emerge around like the railroad tracks, which were higher land, and now that higher land is actually sought after. So you've got this interesting phenomenon where people are moving, you know, Miami is crazy, like rapidly growing. It's as if climate change isn't even happening. So there's so much development and people are buying up land. And so there's a lot of money to be made still. And so a lot of developers are kind of encroaching in now on those previously less attractive lands, but are now very attractive because they're on higher land. So it's creating this like multiplied gentrification effect, like natural gentrification that's already happening times the climate factor of land being, you know, higher.
Thank you for that explanation. It's really wild to see the ways that the world is changing so rapidly. And what I really appreciate again about both of your work is that you're using art and technology as a form of storytelling to move people towards advocacy and activism. So some of our questions that came in, and my last question to both of you is, do you consider yourself activists or artivists? Somebody asked, how can climate activists use art as a tool in an effective and efficient and fast communication way? And just generally, like, what is your advice to the scientific community to move people towards more activism?
Yeah, I definitely do consider myself an activist artist. I have my own approach to activism. I'm not really the type to gather huge communities and like like that. But I feel like we each have to. I see this movement as so large and so much work needs to be done that there's a place for so many kinds of people. It's not like we need one kind of person who will save the day, but rather we need to really unite and work as a team. And scientists have their skills that are necessary. I think if there was something I wish scientists would do better, I think it's just trying to connect more to relating it to the individual in a way that, like, okay, this information, I understand how it relates to me and my world. And, or even the emotion, and realizing that as much as logic, you want to be rational, all humans are emotional at the end of the day, and that emotion is actually a wonderful tool, like a wonderful tool for connecting. And it's how if you just think about like your memories and what each of us, even the most logical of us, probably we hold on to the most are the emotional things, like who we love in our lives, the memories that are seared in our brains. And as long as we kind of understand that, I think another thing too is just how important it is to be accepting of all people and approaches. So I think in the environmental movement, less like, oh, that's not the right way to do it, or that's a less important issue than this issue. I think like all of it's so important, and it's all part of the change that needs to happen.
Yeah, so artivism or activism, I think that I definitely do embrace it, just because I think I'm aware of what's going on in the world and I live in it. So that's something that, seeps into my work. But like Linda mentioned, I think that, everybody has their own unique way and kind of like skills and talents they can implement. And for me, it really has been a quote unquote in the art realm. So yes, artivism influences that, because I think that, like, again, this is a global problem and it's in all, sectors of our communities. And in terms of engaging with, the science community or merging it with art, I really think it's just a matter of really engaging artists and inviting them to collaborate. I think that these fields are so sometimes vastly like completely different and separate, but really there's a lot of similarities. And I think that, again, visual artists can drive those points home in the way Linda was saying, by creating experiences which are way more powerful sometimes than kind of like telling people some information. Have them experience it, and it changes one because you carry those memories with you. So I'm always thinking about how is my art shifting one or two neurons in somebody's brain. Maybe it doesn't happen right here, but maybe next week, maybe you leave this conversation and it's raining and you notice a little puddle of water and somehow you get flashes back to this video. That's, I think, where kind of like the change starts to happen if you're not already kind of like turned on to it.
Thank you so much, both of you, for sharing your work with us and for enlightening us with this conversation. I wish that we had a lot more time to talk, but unfortunately, our plenary is ending today, but you really kicked this Watershed Forum off to a really great start with really important conversations. I'm sure there's plenty of questions, so feel free to contact Linda and Hoesy or myself if you have any questions. And I want to just say thank you. Let's give a virtual hand to our speakers. I hope everyone has a wonderful time at the forum.
Thank you all so much. This was really wonderful.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Have a good one.